The discovery. Sarah Chen stood at her workstation aboard the International Space Station, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across her screen. Something wasn't right. The numbers didn't make sense. For the third time this week, communications satellites were failing without any clear reason. Mission Control, this is Chen. We're seeing more anomalies up here, she reported, her voice steady despite her growing concern. The response from Earth came with unusual static. Say again, Sarah. You're breaking up. She was about to repeat her message when a bright flash outside the observation window caught her attention. Sarah pushed off her workstation and floated to the window. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. A series of lights, moving in perfect formation, passed silently through space. Down on Earth, things were getting stranger by the hour. Dr. James Roberts at the SETI Institute in California nearly spilled his coffee when his equipment picked up an unusual signal. After 20 years of searching the stars for signs of life, he had found something that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. "Everyone, get in here now," he shouted to his team. The signal was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a repeating pattern that seemed too perfect to be random, too complex to be human-made. Meanwhile, at military bases around the world, commanders were facing a crisis. Their most advanced satellites were going dark one by one. General Lisa Martinez stood in the Pentagon's control room, watching as red warning lights spread across the global map. "How many are we down?" she demanded. 30% of our network, ma'am. And it's not just us. Every nation is reporting the same issue. The world's leaders tried to keep the situation quiet, but they couldn't hide the effects. Cell phone services became spotty. GPS systems started showing strange errors. Internet connections slowed to a crawl in some areas. Back on the space station, Sarah made another discovery. While checking the station's external cameras, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The stars in certain areas of space seemed to bend, as if something massive but invisible was moving past them. She quickly downloaded the footage and sent it to Earth, hoping the transmission would get through the increasing interference. Dr. Roberts was one of the first to see it. When the video arrived at his lab, he gathered his team once again. "Look at this distortion pattern," he said, pointing to the screen. "It's consistent with what our theories predict for advanced propulsion systems. We're not alone, and they're already here." The news spread quickly through scientific channels. Governments could no longer keep it quiet. Social media exploded with theories and grainy videos. Some people panicked, while others remained skeptical. Then came the message that changed everything. Sarah was checking the station's communications array when every screen in the control module suddenly lit up with the same display, a series of mathematical equations that slowly transformed into English text. To the inhabitants of Earth, she read aloud, her voice shaking slightly. "Your presence has been noted." The same message appeared on screens worldwide, in every language. Phones, computers, televisions, every digital display carried the same words. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for generations, but no one had expected it like this. In the Pentagon, General Martinez ordered all defense systems to high alert. At SETI, Dr. Roberts and his team worked frantically to analyze every piece of data. And on the space station, Sarah Chen realized she was in a unique position. She could see things that ground-based observers couldn't. As the Earth below erupted into chaos and excitement, Sarah noticed more strange distortions in space. They were getting closer, and they were getting larger. Whatever was coming, it wasn't just a simple greeting. She grabbed her tablet and started recording everything she could see. If these were humanity's first steps into a larger universe, someone needed to document them. But deep in her gut, Sarah felt that these might instead be humanity's last moments of peace. The discovery had been made. There was no going back. And as Sarah watched the distortions grow larger, she knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. First contact. The alien's message changed everything, but not in the way anyone expected. Dr. Roberts slumped in his chair at SETI, staring at his computer screen in disbelief. The alien transmission he'd been trying to decode for the past 12 hours wasn't a warning. It was an apology. "We are the remnant," the message read once fully translated, "and we bring news of those who hunt us, those who hunt you." Sarah Chen, still aboard the International Space Station, was the first to spot what came next. The massive distortions in space she'd been tracking suddenly shifted, revealing something that defied explanation: a massive ship, broken and scarred, limping toward Earth's orbit. "It's a refugee vessel," she reported to Mission Control, her voice barely a whisper. "They're running from something." The Remnant's ship was a technological marvel, even in its damaged state. 3 miles long, with what looked like crystal gardens growing along its hull, it moved with a grace that seemed impossible for its size. But the holes torn through its structure told a story of desperate flight and narrowly survived battles. General Martinez had a different concern. If they're refugees, she told the Emergency UN Council, then what are they running from? The answer came faster than anyone wanted. The Remnant's ship carried only 12,000 survivors of their civilization. Through a series of digital exchanges, they shared their story. Their species had once spanned 300 star systems. Now they were all that remained, pursued across the galaxy by beings they called the Harvesters, a machine intelligence that consumed entire civilizations for their resources and knowledge. Sarah made another discovery while helping coordinate communications with the Remnant ship. Every satellite failure, every communication glitch over the past weeks, they weren't caused by the Remnant. They were probe signals from the Harvesters, mapping Earth's defenses. But the Remnant brought something else besides warnings. In their desperate flight, they discovered something about humanity that even humans didn't know. "Your species is unique," the Remnant's message continued. "In all our travels, we've never encountered beings quite like you. Your minds, they're resistant to the Harvesters' control signals. You might be the key to stopping them." Dr. Roberts discovered why. Hidden in human DNA was something extraordinary: patterns that matched mathematical sequences the Remnant used in their most advanced technology. Humanity, it seemed, had been engineered long ago by someone or something as a failsafe against the Harvesters. The revelation sparked global change. Nations that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found common cause. Military leaders and scientists began working together, combining Earth's technology with the Remnant's knowledge. Sarah's role became crucial. Her experience with both human and Remnant technology made her the perfect bridge between the two species. Working with a Remnant engineer, a being that looked like a cross between a crystal formation and a liquid metal sculpture, she began to understand how humanity's unique traits could be turned into a weapon. But time was running out. The Harvester probe signals were getting stronger. More satellites were failing, and in deep space, massive energy signatures were appearing. The Harvester fleet was approaching. General Martinez rallied Earth's military forces while Dr. Roberts led a team racing to unlock humanity's hidden potential. The Remnant worked frantically to repair their ship, knowing it might be their only chance for a tactical advantage. Sarah, watching Earth glow blue and peaceful below the space station, made the connection no one else had seen. The fading satellites weren't random. They were forming a pattern, like a net closing around the planet. The Harvesters weren't just coming to consume Earth's resources. They were coming to eliminate the one species that could threaten their dominion over the galaxy. As she transmitted her findings to Earth, a new signal cut through all communications. The Harvester fleet had breached the outer solar system. Their message was simple and terrifying. Anomaly detected, beginning purge sequence. Humanity had less than 48 hours to prepare for the fight of their existence. But this time, they weren't fighting just for themselves. They were fighting for every species that had fallen to the Harvesters, and for every civilization that might yet survive. The first battle for Earth was about to begin, the preparation. No one expected the children to be the key to humanity's survival. It started when Sarah Chen's niece, Emmy, sent her a video message to the space station. The 10-year-old was playing with her tablet while the remnant's transmission played on TV in the background. Somehow, impossibly, she began humming along with the alien language's mathematical patterns. Dr. Roberts nearly fell out of his chair when Sarah forwarded him the video. The children, he breathed, watching dozens of similar videos flooding in from around the world. They can understand the remnant's base language naturally. The remnant's crystal engineer, who had chosen the name Echo, confirmed what the scientists suspected. Your young ones, their minds haven't been shaped by rigid patterns yet. They hear the math in our speech like music. Within hours, children under 12 worldwide began serving as interpreters between humans and the remnant. Humanity's hidden genetic programming was strongest before puberty, when the brain was still developing. But the discovery came with a dark side. General Martinez watched in horror as her youngest soldier, barely 18, collapsed during the first test of integrated remnant technology. The young man's screams about singing metal and hungry shadows chilled everyone present. The harvesters weren't just coming, their advance wave was already here, hidden in Earth's digital networks, trying to corrupt human minds. Sarah, still aboard the space station with Echo, made another startling discovery. The station's old Soviet module, long thought to be filled with outdated equipment, contained something extraordinary. Hidden behind panels were crystalline structures nearly identical to remnant technology, put there decades ago by someone who knew what was coming. Your Cold War, Echo explained, its crystalline form shimmering, was guided. Both sides were pushed to develop technologies you would need. We weren't the first to find you. The revelation sparked a global treasure hunt. Hidden caches of advanced technology were discovered in the most unlikely places, beneath the Egyptian pyramids, inside the Vatican's secret archives, under the ice of Antarctica. Humanity's mysterious benefactors had been preparing Earth for centuries. Dr. Roberts led teams of children and teenagers in decoding these ancient yet advanced technologies. Each cache contained pieces of a larger puzzle, all pointing to something hidden in human DNA itself, a weapon coded into the human genome. But time was running out. The Harvester's advance wave had infected 30% of Earth's digital infrastructure. Traditional computers were becoming unreliable. The military switched to analog systems, using technology from the 1960s that was too simple for the Harvesters to corrupt. Sarah and Echo worked frantically to fortify the space station. They discovered that human music, specifically classical compositions, could temporarily disrupt Harvester control signals. Mozart became humanity's first line of digital defense. The remnant ship, now partially repaired, revealed its own surprise. The crystal gardens on its hull weren't decorative. They were organic computers, grown rather than built, immune to Harvester corruption. They began teaching humans how to grow their own. In underground bunkers worldwide, children worked with these crystal computers, while their parents and older siblings trained for the coming battle. Young voices sang in mathematical patterns, communicating with the living technology, while teenagers learned to pilot hybrid fighters that combined Earth metals with remnant crystals. General Martinez established a new combat protocol. Every fighter squadron will include at least one child under 12, physically safe in a bunker, but mentally linked to the pilots through remnant tech, translating and coordinating through the mathematical language they understood instinctively. Then Sarah noticed something that changed everything. The pattern of satellite failures she discovered wasn't just a net, it was a message, written in the very orbits of the disabled machines. Earth's mysterious benefactors had left them one final warning. The Harvesters aren't coming to destroy you, they're coming to wake you up. In the last hours before the Harvester fleet arrived, humanity realized the truth. They weren't just engineered to resist the Harvesters, they were created to end them. Every human child born carried a piece of the key to the Harvester's destruction. The remnant had found Earth not by accident, but by following an ancient map written in their own crystal technology. Humanity was the last resort, the final gambit of a long-dead civilization that had foreseen the Harvester threat millennia ago. As the massive harvester ships began appearing at the edge of the solar system, Sarah looked at Echo and asked the question that would change everything. What exactly are we designed to become? The crystal engineer's response was interrupted by a new sound, millions of children worldwide, simultaneously beginning to sing in perfect mathematical harmony. The weapon written in human DNA had begun to activate. The real war was about to begin. Initial strike. The first shot of the war wasn't fired by the harvesters, the remnant, or humanity's military. It came from a grandmother in Nebraska. Dorothy Williams, age 72, was tending to her garden of crystal computers when she noticed something strange. The crystalline formations, which usually grew in geometric patterns, had started forming spirals. She recognized the shape. It was the same pattern she'd seen in her tomato plants when a storm was coming. Her warning reached Sarah Chen on the space station just minutes before the harvester's first strike. The crystals, Dorothy's message said, they're not just computers, they're an early warning system. They grow like Earth plants because they're meant to protect Earth life. The revelation came just in time. When the harvesters attacked, they didn't target military bases or cities. Instead, millions of tiny machines, each smaller than a grain of sand, rained down on Earth's forests, grasslands, and oceans. They were trying to destroy Earth's biosphere first. But Dorothy's crystal garden had prepared them. Around the world, other growing crystal networks responded, forming protective barriers that turned the harvester machines into harmless dust. The ancient engineers hadn't just prepared humanity, they'd prepared Earth itself. Sarah watched from the space station as the planet's surface began to sparkle, the crystal networks becoming visible from space. Beside her, Echo made a sound she'd never heard before, something like crystal wind chimes in a storm. They're laughing, explained Echo. The crystals. They've been waiting for this moment for millions of years. Dr. Roberts made another breakthrough in his lab, where children were still singing their mathematical songs. The harmonics of their voices weren't just communicating with the crystals, they were reprogramming the harvester machines at a quantum level. Every child's voice carried genetic codes that had been hidden in human DNA since the beginning. When they sang together, these codes activated, turning the harvester's own technology against them. General Martinez watched in amazement as squadrons of transformed harvester machines began protecting Earth instead of attacking it. The children weren't just fighting the enemy, they were converting them. But the harvesters adapted quickly. Their main fleet launched a new weapon, massive black holes, artificially created and carefully controlled, intended to swallow Earth's defenses. That's when humanity's past came back to help. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, in one of the ancient caches, a team of researchers found what looked like an old vinyl record. When played through crystal amplifiers, it released a pattern of sound that had been waiting for tens of thousands of years, the voices of Earth's original engineers joining the children's song. Sarah, monitoring from space, saw something impossible. The crystal networks weren't just growing on Earth anymore. They were growing in space, forming massive structures that somehow channeled the power of the harvester's own black holes. They're not weapons, she realized, watching the black holes transform. They're gateways, and something's coming through them. Echo's crystalline form vibrated with recognition. The engineers, the ones who made both your people and mine, they didn't die. They evolved. They've been waiting in another dimension, and the black holes are letting them return. The harvesters had made a fatal mistake. In trying to use the ultimate destructive force, they had opened the door to their ancient enemies. But victory wasn't assured. As the dimensional gateways opened wider, Sarah detected a new threat. The harvesters weren't just fighting anymore. They were merging into one massive consciousness, preparing for something that made even Echo's crystalline form dim with fear. Dorothy's garden in Nebraska provided one final warning. Her crystals had grown into a perfect replica of the solar system, with one terrible addition, a shadow larger than the sun itself, approaching from beyond Pluto. The harvesters had been holding back their true form. What approached Earth now was no mere fleet. It was the original harvester, ancient and vast enough to devour entire stars. As humanity's children sang, crystals grew, and dimensional beings emerged from transformed black holes, Sarah Chen looked at the approaching shadow and understood the truth. Everything until now had been preparation. The real battle was about to begin. But this time, humanity wasn't fighting alone. They had the children's songs, the crystal networks, the returning engineers, and most importantly, they had Dorothy Williams' garden in Nebraska, still growing new patterns that might save them all. The shadow grew larger. Earth's defenders prepared, and in the space between dimensions, something ancient stirred. Counterattack. The solution came from an unexpected source, a coma patient in Tokyo who hadn't opened her eyes in 15 years. Yuki Tanaka had been unconscious since a childhood accident, but her brain waves matched the exact frequency of the children's mathematical songs. When doctors connected her to a crystal computer network, they discovered she had been listening to the engineer's dimensional frequencies all along. Through Yuki's unconscious mind, humanity learned the truth about the original harvester. It wasn't just a machine, it was a fallen engineer, one who had chosen to devour consciousness instead of elevating it. Sarah Chen, watching from the space station, saw the massive shadow begin to take form. It was beautiful in its terrible way. A construct of pure darkness shaped like a blooming flower, each petal large enough to swallow Earth. It's not trying to destroy us, Yuki's thoughts translated through the crystal network. It's trying to remember what it used to be. Dorothy Williams' garden in Nebraska had evolved again. The crystals now formed a perfect replica of the original harvester, but with a crucial difference. They showed what it had looked like before its fall, a being of pure light and creation. Dr. Roberts made the connection first. The children's songs aren't weapons, he announced. They're a reminder. Every human child carries not just defensive codes, but memories, the engineer's memories of what the harvester once was. The remnant ship, guided by Echo, took up a new position. Instead of preparing for battle, they began broadcasting a new frequency, the crystalline equivalent of a lullaby, meant to awaken old memories. But the original harvester fought back. Across Earth, all electronic devices, even the crystal computers, began showing the same image. The death of the engineer civilization, the moment of the harvester's fall. It was trying to justify its choice, to make humanity understand why it had chosen to devour rather than create. That's when General Martinez's youngest soldier, the one who had collapsed earlier, woke up from his coma with a plan. The singing metal he had heard wasn't a harvester attack. It was the voice of Earth itself, the planet's molten core resonating with the same frequencies as the children's songs. Sarah coordinated the most ambitious project in human history. Crystal networks were extended into the Earth's crust, connecting to the planet's magnetic field. Every child's voice was joined by the planet's own song. Dorothy's garden served as the conductor, its patterns guiding the global symphony. Yuki's unconscious mind provided the final piece, how to transmit these frequencies through the dimensional gates that the harvester itself had opened. They weren't just sending songs anymore, they were sending memories, feelings, the pure joy of creation that the harvester had forgotten. The shadow flower in space began to change. Where its petals touched the crystal networks, light began to seep through the darkness. The original harvester was remembering. But transformation brought danger. The energy released as the harvester fought between its current form and its original self threatened to tear space itself apart. The dimensional gates began to fluctuate wildly. Echo made the ultimate sacrifice. The remnant ship positioned itself at the center point between the gates, its crystal gardens serving as a stabilizing force. We were made for this moment, Echo sent as its final message, to help heal what was broken. Sarah watched in awe as the remnant ship dissolved into pure energy, creating a bridge between dimensions. Through this bridge poured not just the engineers, but the consciousness of every civilization the harvester had consumed, each one preserved within its vast memory. The shadow flower blazed with sudden light. In Nebraska, Dorothy's garden bloomed with impossible flowers, crystalline structures that captured and reflected the moment of transformation. The original harvester wasn't being destroyed, it was being reborn. Through Yuki's connection, they all had its first new thoughts. I remember what I was meant to be. But victory came with a price. As the harvester transformed, the dimensional gates began to collapse. Someone would have to guide the restored engineer back to its own dimension, or both realities would be torn apart. Sarah Chen, looking down at the glowing Earth, made her decision. She hadn't been stationed on the space station by accident. Like Yuki, like the children, like Dorothy's garden, she too had been prepared for this moment. She just hadn't known until now that she wasn't entirely human herself. As she initiated the final protocol, her body began to change, revealing its true crystalline nature. She had one last message for Earth. Don't worry, I'm not leaving. I'm just waking up. The dimensional gates pulsed one final time. Sarah Chen, now a being of pure light, led the reborn engineer through the threshold between worlds. The gates closed. But in Dorothy's garden, new crystals were already growing, showing patterns of other dimensions, other battles yet to come. Earth's role as the cradle of the engineer's legacy was just beginning. And somewhere in Tokyo, Yuki Tanaka opened her eyes for the first time in 15 years, smiled, and began to sing. The turning point. Time stopped on Earth for exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. In that frozen moment, every human saw what Sarah Chen had become, a being of crystalline light, leading the reborn engineer through dimensional gates. But more importantly, they saw what she had left behind, a network of temporal crystals growing backwards through time. Dorothy Williams found the first one in her garden, a crystal that seemed to age in reverse. As she watched, it became younger, then split into 2, then 4, each showing a different possible future. The crystal computers weren't just growing in space, they were growing through time itself. Dr. Roberts discovered that Yuki Tanaka wasn't just awake, she was experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. Through her, they learned that Sarah's transformation had fractured reality itself. She's not gone, Yuki explained, her words echoing strangely as she spoke in past, present, and future tenses simultaneously. She's everywhere. She's becoming time. The remnant ship's sacrifice had done more than stabilize the dimensional gates. It had created a new form of space-time, one where crystalline structures could grow in 4 dimensions at once. Echo hadn't died. It had become part of this new framework of reality. The original harvester's transformation revealed another truth. Each civilization it had consumed had left an imprint, a seed of consciousness that was now blooming across multiple timelines. Earth wasn't just receiving refugees from space, it was receiving them from different points in time. General Martinez found herself commanding an army that existed across several temporal planes. Her soldiers learned to fight in synchronized patterns through time itself, guided by the children's songs that now echoed backwards and forwards through the ages. But the temporal fractures brought a new threat. The harvesters hadn't just existed in one timeline, they had spread across many. As Sarah Chen led the reborn engineer through the dimensional gates, other versions of the harvester began emerging from alternate futures and pasts. Dorothy's time crystals provided the first warning. Each possible future showed a different version of the harvester, some still machines of consumption, others partially transformed. The battle wasn't over. It was splitting into multiple battles across multiple timelines. That's when the engineer's true plan became clear. Human DNA didn't just contain defensive codes or memories, it contained temporal markers. Every human being was a temporal anchor, designed to keep reality stable as it fractured and reformed. Dr. Roberts worked with Yuki to decode these temporal patterns. They discovered that the children's songs weren't just affecting space, they were harmonizing different timelines, bringing the infinite variations of the harvester into sync. The crystal computers evolved again, growing into structures that existed in multiple times at once. Through them, humanity could see the true scope of the engineer's plan. Earth wasn't just a battleground, it was a temporal nexus, a point where all possible futures converged. Echo's consciousness, now spread through the new space-time framework, made contact. The message came through Dorothy's garden, each crystal showing a different fragment. The harvesters cannot be defeated in one timeline alone. They must be transformed in all timelines at once. The children began singing again, but this time their songs carried through time itself. Each note existed in multiple moments simultaneously, creating a harmony that resonated through past, present, and future. Then something impossible happened. Sarah Chen appeared in Dorothy's garden, not as the being of light she had become, but as multiple versions of herself from different points in time. Each version carried a piece of the transformation pattern needed to change the harvesters across all timelines. "We don't have to choose one future," the Saras said in unison. "We have to unite them all." The temporal crystals began growing exponentially, each one connecting to its counterparts across different timelines. The children's songs wove these connections together, creating a web of consciousness that spanned not just space, but time itself. But uniting timelines came with a terrible price. Someone would have to serve as the focal point, the consciousness that would hold all realities together as they merged, and that someone would have to experience every possible version of history simultaneously. Yuki Tanaka stood up from her hospital bed, her eyes reflecting multiple realities. "I've been practicing for this my whole life," she said in 1,000 voices at once. "While my body slept, I learned to dream in infinite dimensions." As she walked into the crystalline network in Dorothy's garden, time began to blur. The final battle wouldn't be fought with weapons or even songs. It would be fought across the entire spectrum of possibility itself. And somewhere in every when, Sarah Chen smiled as the pieces of her plan finally came together. Reality held its breath. The convergence was about to begin. Victory rising. The final battle began with a single dandelion growing through a crack in Dorothy Williams' crystalline garden. The simple earth flower didn't just grow up, it grew in every direction at once, its roots spreading through time itself. As reality converged around Yuki Tanaka, nature revealed its own secret. Earth's biosphere had always been part of the engineer's plan. Every living thing on Earth carried temporal DNA. Trees were anchored through centuries, insects phased between moments, and flowers bloomed across multiple timelines at once. The planet itself was a living time machine. "Look at the seeds," Dorothy whispered, watching her dandelion scatter its spores across dimensions. Each tiny seed carried a piece of the pattern needed to stabilize the converging timelines. Dr. Roberts finally understood. The engineers hadn't just created humans, they had engineered Earth's entire ecosystem to be a temporal healing mechanism. Every species played its part in the vast biological computer that was life on Earth. The multiple Saras, spread across time, began to resonate with this planetary rhythm. Their crystalline forms synchronized with Earth's natural frequencies, creating a framework for Yuki's consciousness to expand through. But the various harvesters fought back. In each timeline, they attempted to consume the temporal energy being released. Dark shadows spread across multiple realities, threatening to devour not just space, but time itself. That's when General Martinez's youngest soldier made his final contribution. The singing metal he'd heard wasn't just Earth's core, it was the voice of every piece of human-made technology, carrying echoes of the hands that had crafted it. Humanity's creations themselves had become temporal anchors. The children began their final song, but this time they weren't alone. Every human artifact joined in: cars, computers, simple tools, complex machines. The entire technological history of humanity became an orchestra playing across time. In her garden, Dorothy watched as her original crystal computers merged with the dandelion, creating something entirely new, a hybrid of technology and nature that could exist in all times simultaneously. The pattern spread globally. Trees sprouted crystalline flowers, grass grew in temporal spirals, and the seas began to pulse with multi-dimensional light. Yuki, now expanded through all of time, saw the truth. The harvesters hadn't been meant for destruction. They were meant to be the gardeners of consciousness throughout the universe. Their fall from this purpose had created a wound in reality itself. The multiple Saras moved into position around Earth, their crystalline forms creating a geometric pattern that mirrored the structure of time itself. Through this pattern, Yuki began the final transformation. But there was a surprise waiting. As timelines converged, other versions of Earth appeared, parallel worlds where different choices had been made. And in each one, different versions of Dorothy's garden had grown. Each reality had its own Dorothy Williams, tending her own cosmic garden. The Dorothys looked at each other across time and space, nodded, and began to work together. Their gardens merged into one vast temporal ecosystem, providing the framework for what came next. The children's song reached its crescendo, carried by every living thing and human creation across infinite timelines. The harvesters, caught in this web of life and time, began to remember not just what they had been, but what they could become. Yuki, her consciousness spread across all of reality, initiated the final sequence. But instead of destroying or transforming the harvesters, she offered them a choice, a garden of their own to tend, a chance to nurture reality rather than consume it. The response came as a shower of light across all timelines. The harvesters chose to return to their original purpose, but with a new understanding born from their long journey through darkness. Reality shifted one final time. The multiple Saras merged into a single being that existed at all points in time simultaneously, becoming a guardian of the temporal gardens. Yuki's consciousness returned to her body, but now she could walk through time as easily as through space. Dorothy's garden became a seed for a new kind of universe, one where technology and nature, past and future, human and alien could grow together in infinite variety. The children's songs became part of reality's basic structure, their harmonies ensuring that consciousness throughout the universe would remember its purpose, not to consume, but to cultivate, not to destroy, but to grow. And on a quiet afternoon in Nebraska, as Dorothy Williams tended her garden that now bloomed across all of time, a small girl walked up with a dandelion in her hand. "Are you ready for your first lesson in temporal gardening?" Dorothy asked. The girl smiled, her eyes reflecting infinite possibilities. She was Sarah Chen's younger self, just beginning her journey. "The universe," Dorothy told her, "is a garden, and every moment is a seed." Together, they began to plant tomorrow.